to Carol, but that is my cue to hand it off to the CAT board chair and chair of the Del Mar College Board of Regents, Carol Scott. So Carol, the floor is yours.
Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm looking forward to learning a lot from our speakers to talk about the Aspen Institute and hear some great things. I'd like us all to model some good behavior just for our guests. If you can put your college name or your organization name behind your name on Zoom, that's real helpful for folks to know where we are all coming from. And then my last little bit is to remind everyone that we have our CAT annual conference and BOTI Institute coming up in September. The deadline for registration is September 5th. So we're looking forward to seeing folks there. And if you haven't yet registered, please do so. We do have a virtual option for those who are not comfortable traveling to Austin and still want to participate in the session. So we hope to see a number of registrations, both in person and virtually, as we enter into September and our annual conference. We haven't seen each other face to face since February of 2020. So we're really looking forward to the opportunity to see each other, but also want to make sure that folks feel comfortable and safe in participating in the conference. So we look forward to seeing you all there. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over and let, I guess, Martha or someone else introduce our speakers today. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Carol. So good afternoon, trustees, CEOs, and college leaders. Welcome to this overview of the Aspen Prize webinar. I would ask that you please post any questions you have during today's presentations in the chat, and we'll have a time at the end for Josh to respond to those questions. As you know, in 2021, 4 of the 10 Aspen Prize College finalists were from Texas, with San Antonio College winning the prize this year. So in this webinar, Josh Weiner will explain the Aspen Prize purpose and process. A little bit about Josh. Joshua Weiner is the founder and executive director of the College Excellence Program at the Aspen Institute, where he also serves as a vice president. Josh has spent the past 2 decades designing and building new organizations that promote talent development and social mobility. He's authored numerous publications about education, including the book, What Excellent Community Colleges Do, Preparing All Students for Success. Josh, thanks so much for being here today, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much. It's great to be with all of you and to be with so many friends. I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm going to pause for a moment because it's hard for me to multitask. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Great. And then I'm just going to go from beginning. Great. So it's great to be with all of you. I really appreciate all the work that's being done in Texas to advance student success. First, let me just say that we love to partner around the country with organizations that really share our values, which is that advancing student success and equity are key to our country's future through higher education. And when we have partners like we have in Texas, and I won't say you're the best state a partner that we have, because that would be maligning potentially 49 others, but I will say that you're a terrific partner, and we'll leave it at that. It really is a joy for us because you all have a lot of work to do at the state level. You get together at the state level. You've built these amazing infrastructures like BOTI, which is a model for the country, and that we've modeled some work in California and New York State after. And so when we have partners like you, it's a real joy to be able to come in and share our understanding of student success and some of our work. The second thing I just want to say in opening is how important boards of trustees are. For those of you who are here as board members, thank you for your service. I myself just came off of 5 years of service on our university board, which has a community college as part of it. And it's hard work and it's volunteer work. I am both deeply appreciative of highly effective boards and frankly a little worried nationally that not enough folks are doing what you're doing, which is engaging in this kind of professional development so you can advance student success and equity. So thank you for your service, and it's a pleasure to be part of the Institute pre-work. So what I want to talk about today is the Aspen Prize for Community College Excellence. First, its goals. Second is the process we use for selection. Third is the outcomes, and finally a few lessons learned. And then I'll open it for questions. So let's start with the Aspen Prize for Community College Excellence Goals. The prize was started in 2011, actually in 2010, but the first award was 2011. And a group came together that included folks from the Community College Research Center, AACC, experts in the field who were leaders, researchers, to try to figure out how we could elevate community colleges, define excellence, and replicate effective practice. At the time, I was actually just coming on board, and I had some experience with community colleges at the Jack Kent Cooke Foundation, where I was building the programs there. And one of the things that struck me is that we didn't use the words community college and excellence very often together. And that struck me as very strange, because I had interacted with some terrific community colleges. In any sector where you have over 1,000 actors, some are going to be better than others. So we brought a group together to say, well, how can we advance a definition of excellence, replicate that, but also let's recognize community colleges that are excellent as reflective of what's possible in the sector and what the aspirations of the sector might be. So we brought a group of people together to think through what the goals of this new prize might be. And there were really three. As I mentioned, one was elevate the community college sector. Why does that matter? Well, we know that when states are parsing out their budgets, community colleges often are not first in line. Higher ed is not first in line, and within higher ed, community colleges often get the short shrift. We know that there's stigma around community colleges around the country, unwarranted stigma because of the important work that community colleges do. And so part of the idea was to ensure that community colleges were recognized for the important role they play in our society in advancing talent development and equitable social mobility for individuals. And by identifying excellent colleges, we could elevate the entire sector. Second, we wanted to promote a comprehensive definition of excellence. When we asked people, what does it mean to be an excellent community college 12 years ago, I think access was pretty squarely defined. Low cost, access to higher education. We were hearing about completion, but we hadn't really coalesced around a definition of excellence that was comprehensive, that took into account what students experienced while in college and after they graduated. And I'll get back to that in a moment. And then finally, once we identified excellent colleges, we wanted to help replicate highly effective practices and highly effective leadership throughout the sector. So let me just talk about each of those separately. What have we accomplished? Well, you can see here the enormous amount of press that the prize has gotten. You can see that we've had actually presentations at the Republican and Democratic national conventions by prize finalists, students, etc. President Obama, this is a wonderful story where in the last year of his presidency, he had visited 49 states, but he had never been to South Dakota, and asked his staff, who do we know in South Dakota? And somebody said, hey, wasn't one of those Aspen Prize finalists from there? And so they called up and said, do you think they'd mind if he came to be the commencement speaker? There's a sitting president coming to a 2,000 person technical college in Watertown, South Dakota. By the way, a red-leaning place. There's a wonderful piece in the New York Times about how they nonetheless welcomed the president, Air Force One, the helicopter that landed there, notwithstanding the political differences he may have had with the people there. Query whether a decade, 6 years later, we'd have that same welcome. I think we may be more divided today than we were then. But we certainly, I think it's fair to say, have done good work on this front in helping to elevate the sector. What about promoting a definition of excellence? Pardon the typo here on colleges. Boy, what a thing to misspell. You know, our prize definition really is being used in a lot of different places. From the Senate, researchers are using it. Researchers contact us regularly and they say, we want to look at what the best colleges are doing. How are we going to define that? Well, here you go. We do a huge amount of work to figure that out. Mackenzie Scott, you all heard of Mackenzie Scott? She's given somewhere around $750 million to community colleges in the last couple of years. 80% of those colleges are Aspen Prize finalists. They're using our lists or our methodology or somewhere in between. So clearly this definition of excellence is permeating the field. In Florida, they actually give, and I don't know if this is good practice or not, I'm not going to comment on that, but they actually give an appropriation to Aspen Prize winners in the state budget. So the point here is that the definition of excellence is permeating the field. And this is what the definition is. And I want to spend a moment on this because often when we say student success, we think about completion, which is the second of these, the second part of this definition. But this is how we define excellence in the Aspen Prize. First is learning outcomes. Do colleges know whether students are learning at the college-wide program and course level? And are they working to close those gaps? Second, do students complete credentials? It's much better to complete a credential than not. We all know that. Thirdly, do students whose credentials are designed for transfer, meaning really Associates of Arts and Associates of Science degrees, not the applied ones, but whose credentials are designed for to be the first 2 years of a transfer pathway, do they transfer and get bachelor's degrees? Fourth, do students have strong labor market outcomes? Do they get jobs at good pay? And then finally, equity across all of those other measures. And I close with equity, not because it's last in the list, but because it relates to all of the others. Is there equitable access and outcomes? Are there equitable access and outcomes in learning, completion, transfer, and labor market outcomes? We also look at high absolute performance, who are the best actors in the field, and improvement over time, who's getting better and better. So in all of our work, this is the way we define excellence. And this is a comprehensive definition in our view. And it frankly drives our four-year college work as well. It drives all of the work we do, not just the work of the Aspen Prize. The third goal of the Aspen Prize is to facilitate the replication of effective practice. Our primary means to that end is our fellowship programs, and we've had terrific participants from Texas, including Christy Ponce, who's on this call. So hello, Christy, great to see you. We have programs for 65 fellows a year, 40 who are aspiring presidents and 25 sitting presidents, new presidents who are in their first 5 years, and their year-long intensive fellowships that we work with them. But we also publish guides. We've actually had, NC State has adopted our framework. All doctoral dissertations must use the Aspen Prize 5-part definition of student success, and we've embedded a curriculum into their work, and on and on. There are lots of examples of how we're taking the learning from the prize to replicate effective practice, and how others are as well. We make lots of our material open access, and they've been used by Achieving the Dream, by the Guided Pathways National Institutes, by the Illinois College Completion Effort, a lot of use for this material throughout the country. So with that, you know the goals of the prize. Now let's talk about how do we select the prize winners. This is going to be brief. We have a technical document online that you can take a look at, and glad to answer questions if any of the college folks are interested in learning more. Ben Barrett, who was at the National Student Clearinghouse, is our data guru and can also help with answering any questions about selection. But in a broad view, it's a 20-month process, and there are 3 rounds. This is about as intensive a research process as you can imagine. We collect extensive quantitative data from federal sources, institutional sources, state sources, and the National Student Clearinghouse. And then we do deep qualitative investigation. Written applications, we have 90-minute leadership calls with 50 colleges. select 10 finalists and do multi-day site visits. And Martha, thank you for your service as a site visitor. In the last couple of cycles, you've added quite a bit to that. But it's folks like Martha, people who, and Martha sort of represents two sides of what we do. A lot of former community college presidents and researchers. And Martha, you may be the only one who fits both categories that's on our site visit team, who do these site visits. And then we hand things off to a high-level prize jury. At each of the 3 stages, an independent panel makes the decisions. We do the work. We obviously summarize what we've seen. So there is an influence at the staff level in how we summarize what is done. But we are trying to be true to what Martha and the other site visitors see. And we really do rely on these independent panels to make the decisions. We do not know who the winner is going into these into the final day. And we've had former governors and high-level New York Times journalists, others who are sitting on that jury, and they take their responsibility very seriously. So first round, there are over 1,000 public community colleges that are considered. We exclude colleges that are under 500 students or that are single-purpose colleges. There are community colleges that just do cosmetology programs. There's a cosmetology institute that you can find in the list of federal community colleges. So you know, that's not really what we mean. We're thinking of comprehensive ones, but there are technically oriented schools and comprehensive colleges. There are large and small. There are 600 student colleges and Miami-Dade 100,000 student colleges and everything in between. And what we're gathering are the available national data. And there's a formula we use that weights equally performance, improvement, and equitable outcomes, by and large on completion-related metrics. Why not the others? Well, there are no national data that can be accessed in this round for all 1,000 colleges, plus colleges, that reflect learning, transfer, and labor market outcomes. So we're really relying on a formula that talks about retention, degrees per 100 FTE, graduation rates, et cetera, performance improvement and equity within those. Once we've got the 150 semifinalists, we invite them to apply, and we've always gotten over 100 applicants, about a 70 to 75% application rate. And there we start to gather institutional cohort data. That enables us to look at more granularly how well students are doing, time to degree, credit accumulation, finishing math and English in the first year, the kinds of things we know are correlated with completion. We can also get National Student Clearinghouse transfer data, because with the application, people have to sign a waiver form saying that we can access the National Student Clearinghouse data, right? We can't get that for the 1,000 because colleges have to agree. And we also ask institutions to tell us about their labor market outcomes and their learning outcomes, quantitative assessments. So at this stage, we're really gathering a lot of data, and we have a 20+ person committee that reads the applications in several stages. We do our leadership calls during this time, and we come up with 10 finalist colleges. From the 10 finalists, we really do a deep dive, even more transfer data. We do site visits. We do learning assessments of the 10 finalists. We've hired NCHEMS, the National Center for Higher Education Management Systems. We look at labor market data even more deeply. We get unemployment insurance match records. So that's the process that we're using. And again, happy to talk more, but you can see it's really comprehensive, and this is why it takes 20 months. So now let's talk a little bit about the outcomes for the prize. With all of that work and those goals, what is it that prize colleges have achieved? Well, first, let me just show you the list of the winners, finalists with distinction, and rising stars. These are colleges that are large and small, rural, urban, suburban. And you might notice something here. Now, I'm not a math major, but there are 50 states in our country, and there are 17 institutions on this list. I don't think the ratio would be 5 came from Texas if it was proportionate. So again, I'm not going to say Texas is doing the best work in the country, all I'm saying is that that ratio is notable, and you all should feel really good about the statewide work you've done. In addition, Mike, I see you've joined us. Congratulations again. In addition to, and Laurel, you're here as well. Sanjak has been a national leader for many years and on the list for many years. Again, the diversity of the colleges is notable, and the concentration in Florida and Texas is an interesting one that we've been thinking about quite a bit. So what do they achieve? Well, the national average on completion rates is about 40%. On completion plus transfer, it's 51% for prize colleges. For the top performers, it's 73%. 73% is possible for community colleges in four-year transfer plus completion. It is possible. This is important. Sanjak, I want to show the 5-year trends at Sanjak. Laurel, this is phenomenal. By the way, I didn't update these charts. There was a little bit of a leveling off for a couple of years after this, and then we've seen a spike again that's gone higher. But these are the kinds of trends that you see of what's possible in graduation rates. So it's not just high absolute performance, it is improvement, as I mentioned. And this is rapid improvement that we've seen at San Jacinto. Similarly, equity in outcomes. Nationally, what we see is that students of color, and this is specifically Black and Latinx students, perform at about a 6% lower rate than others. It's about the same for finalist colleges, but that's a 10% gap increase. They do better, 10% better for students of color at these colleges, and the best are close to 60% graduation rate. That is what you see at the best colleges in the country. Labor market outcomes. Here you can see that at prize colleges, we always, Brazosport, which was a finalist in a past years, you can see that when you compare average salaries of recent graduates, meaning 1 year after graduation, with the average for all new hires in the region, this is what colleges are able to achieve for their graduates in labor market outcomes. And so it's not just graduating, it's graduating with credentials of value that put people in strong position in the labor markets. And we see this across the prize colleges. These are long-term labor market outcomes. We look 5 years afterwards. Miami-Dade is really notable because they are a more transfer-oriented institution. And so if you look 1 year after graduating from community college, where are those students? They're at Florida International and Florida Atlantic University. They're not earning much money. But if you look 5 years later, we see a huge bump in salary. So again, strong labor market outcomes that endure long after graduation, achieved by the colleges that we mentioned. So I want to now close with a few lessons from the Aspen Prize, and just to talk about what is similar and what is different between the colleges. So after several cycles of the prize, we brought together a group of experts who were involved: site visitors, data analysts, people on the selection committee, and we brought them all together. First, we queried them on what was most important to learn from the prize. We were very open-ended. We queried them about what that meant, and we brought them together for a full day to really winnow down what were the most important lessons from the Aspen Prize. And this is what they said. And I still think this was a few years back, this still holds true today. First, leadership and organizational culture matter quite a bit. One of your native sons, Byron McClenny, likes to say, and quote, that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I think it is true that leadership really matters in college-wide culture. You know, there's a lot of really good work on which programs are working well, and we should be proud of our engineering and our nursing programs and our advanced manufacturing program, et cetera, petrochemical, that's great. But those things don't thrive absent strong institutional culture. And that requires excellent leadership. And leadership is at the presidential level, the board level, and the senior team level is where we tend to see that reside. And I just want to say that, again, here I see Mike on the call, I see Laurel Williamson, two representatives of prize colleges. I can't see everybody here to see if anybody else has joined from a prize college, so forgive me if I'm missing anybody. But the excellence of these institutions does not happen without individuals like the folks we see here. Brenda Hellier, of course, from San Jac, Greg Williams from Odessa College, Russell Lowry Hart, Amarillo, and Robert Vela from your system, Mike, who is at San Antonio, the winner this year. This really matters. And as board members, you should understand how much that matters and how important it is to support the leader, but also challenge the leader and keep the leader moving forward, to partner with them on advancing a strong definition of student success and continuing to move forward. Second, guided pathways to continuing education and well-paying jobs. Real clarity on what it is that students are going to get, connecting them early to a pathway, having clarity in course sequences and learning goals, and the advising structures to keep them on the path all the way to graduation. The design of those structures at these colleges are more and more aligned to what comes next. It's not enough to award a bunch of general education associate degrees if that doesn't help students transfer with junior year standing in a major at a four-year college. And so these guided pathways are two very specific things. It's important to see which CTE programs lead to good jobs, not just which ones lead to any job. And so this focus on guided pathways to the next thing in students' lives is absolutely critical at these colleges. Third, an intentional focus on improving teaching and learning. That can be part of guided pathways, but frankly, there's just a basic practice. It's a basic matter of practice, which is, are faculty doing the best they can for teaching and learning? Overall, are they standing up and lecturing? Is drill and kill the way they're doing the work? Or are they doing engaged student learning? And we know there's a science of teaching and learning. And the best colleges, I think about Odessa's work and San Jacinto's work and others, the best colleges really are working college-wide to try to define teaching and learning and helping every faculty member, not just the ones that decide that they want to be part of it, be a better teacher. It is also true that they're particularly focused on students of color and low-income students who, frankly, we haven't served well. So they're thinking about diversifying faculty. They're thinking about creating belonging in the classroom. How do we help students see themselves, not just in the professors, but feel that sense of belonging? Because so many of the students who come to us have been failed by their K-12 systems, have not been successful for one reason or another. And we have to take it on ourselves to own their success by having the most engaged teaching practices. We need better teaching than at the four-year colleges, because we have students often who, frankly, have not seen as much success in prior levels of education. Fourthly, strategic data use to improve practice and close equity gaps. Really constantly looking at the data and asking who's succeeding and who's not. And then once you see who's not succeeding, understanding why. Why is it that Black students are succeeding at a 15% lower rate than others? Is it the non-academic challenges they have? And Amarillo and the Alamo colleges are absolute leaders in this work, in trying to then deliver that. I love, Mike, the work that you all have done in your advocacy centers to try to figure out, Alamo figured out that stress really matters, that one of the things that students get when they come to these advocacy centers for non-academic supports is they're de-stressed, and that enables them to learn. So you're assessing whether they get less stressed when they get to these non-academic supports. But again, it all comes from the data. You identify the students in poverty, the challenges they have, you delivered services, and you're consistently using data to try to figure out whether you are accomplishing the goals that you need to enable students to succeed. And then partnerships and structures aligned to define student outcomes. That's a mouthful. But basically, the best colleges in the country understand they cannot achieve excellence alone. Students do not experience your colleges in isolation. They're experiencing your colleges as part of a continuum that starts either in K-12 with their employer or with a work-based kind of organization, a Goodwill or a state-based reemployment center, right? The adults that are coming to you. They're starting from someplace and then they're going to someplace. And this place they're going is back into the workforce or to a four-year college. And the best colleges understand that. And they're working with K-12 in dual enrollment. Again, the work, Mike, that you all are doing at Alamo with your early college high schools and dual enrollment is really exemplary. They're working to try to equalize K-12 access, but not just any courses in K-12, but connecting the K-12 experience with their completion and post-graduation success outcomes. They're working with adult learning centers to try to bring students in who may not see themselves in higher education, who's been out for 10, 20 years and are now unemployed or underemployed. And then they're working with four-year colleges and employers very closely. It's not so much partnership, it's about new structures so that students experience a seamless pathway in the education to workforce ecosystem from K-12 or CBOs through the community college into a four-year institution or the workforce. It is that community college, as Scott Rawls, who's a president of North Carolina, likes to say, that he's not a to college, he's a through college. Understanding the community college as part of this. And it's really critical because you then, if you think that way, you define your success differently and you expend your resources in different ways. So those are the things that we've learned. A few other things that I polled folks recently and asked, what else are we learning that's not reflected in this? Student success is the college's core business. It's not, enrollment is not the business. Keeping the doors open is not the business. Student success and education is. Faculty are engaged. The best colleges have realized that a lot of the work that's happened to date has been on the advising structures, financial aid, non-academic supports, all hugely important, but none of that fully engages faculty. You got to get to the teaching and learning mission. Output measures are for these colleges. They are how they assess their success. It's not the input measures, how many advisors we have, or how many courses we offer, or how many pathways we have. It is the output measures. Some are leading indicators, students finishing math and English in their first year. Some are interim measures. Did students transfer to a four-year institution? But ultimately, it's about graduating with a degree of value signified by how well you succeed in the next stage of your lives. Fourth, students are not blamed for gaps in student success. There's no question students have got to do the work, right? Let's stipulate to that. But colleges can create the conditions where more students do the work than at other colleges. And the narrative, recognizing that there are students who won't do the work. We all know that's true, but that's not the narrative. The narrative is, what can we do to enable student success? Equity is a core value in every aspect of the work. This is defined differently, but we have seen equity be a core value. And what that means is looking at disaggregated data and seeing who doesn't succeed and devising a strategy for how to close those gaps. It doesn't mean there's one strategy for it. It doesn't mean you have to have specialized services every time, right? There are lots of ways of getting there. Odessa College is a terrific example of a college that frankly has a belonging strategy and an 8-week course strategy that relates to everybody, but they're looking at who succeeds and who doesn't, and they're monitoring that. Two more things. The college is perceived not as a destination, but an educational pathway. I just mentioned that earlier. And the final is, there's a kind of, it's not just humility. It is a recognition that we are doing really, really important and complicated work at the college. And it really matters. Everybody is reminded that if we don't succeed with students, they're either not going to go to college, or frankly, they're going to go to a for-profit institution. That's the reality. And the results at for-profit institutions are just really bad. High debt, low graduation rate, high default rates. And they're reminded that the employers in our community rely on us for talent. The individuals in our community rely on us to have a good life. And we have to strive to be better. And we have to recognize when those outcomes are not what we want them to be, that there's something we can do better. They're constantly working to improve. And they're setting themselves up with that expectation. It's not about blame, but it is about never resting on your laurels, never assuming that you've arrived. And I will say the first winner of the Aspen Prize, Valencia College, I visited, they emerge in lots of our playbooks and a lot of our research. And when I go, every time I go, every year or two, astonished at the new things they've worked on. And in 2011, they were identified as the leading college in the country. And it doesn't end, and that is the ethic there. It is about students. So with that, let me just point you to a page here that has a lot of resources other than my book, which you can get on Amazon. I'm required by my publisher to say that. Everything is free. And there are many, many more publications here, including for those who are trustees. To the extent that you end up in a presidential search, there are tools for hiring leaders who advance student access and success. And I point you to those. Those are aimed directly at trustees. And happy to now answer any questions that you may have. I see that there may be one in the chat. Amarillo College is in the house. Thank you very much. Terrific work there. I could not see that while I was speaking. So I think we've got 20 minutes or so for questions, and I'll stop there and open it up. And pushback. I mean, if there's something that questions about process, or if you disagree with anything I've said, let's have a conversation. But I just want to thank you for welcoming me here today. I'm glad to have a conversation now.
Josh, I have kind of a general question for colleges who are starting down this path, kind of researching this for the first time. And I know we've all heard of the Aspen Institute, but for those colleges who are looking for a starting place, what are the right kind of questions for trustees and regents to ask at the board table as they're starting this process?
Yeah, it's a great question. We've just come off of a year-long fellowship for California trustees, and we worked with the McClennies on developing that. And you know, I think there are two big questions to ask. First is, what are the conditions in my community right now that make the college important and the gaps that we may want to fill? And so there are two sides of that first question. One is, where are the good jobs in our community? Where is the low-wage work in our community? But where are the good jobs? What's growing? What's not? And what degrees are needed, credentials are needed for those jobs. But let's try to define a little bit where the good jobs are. And if you haven't, as a college, named at least a salary goal that defines a good job or a minimum salary goal, it's worth thinking about, right? Some places say $15 an hour, some have said 22, but some marker to try to figure out what a good job is. This other part of the inquiry is who is not being served well in our community? Who's on the margins of our community? How many people are in poverty? How does that break down by race and ethnicity? How many people are in low-wage work who really could use the college? And so I think the first inquiry is about the conditions of the people and the labor market in the community. And to really understand that, and to understand that this is why we do our work. I think so many times when we get into debates at the board level about how much money we spend on this, or some of the political questions that are, coming into our conversation so often, if we just reminded ourselves of why we're there, this is not a Republican or Democratic a concern. We all want talent to be developed in our community. We all want people to be able to have a good job, and the people from our college to be accessing those good jobs. And so one is, I think it's really important to keep and I would say at the beginning and throughout, to keep revisiting those data. And we have some standardized data reports we've used for colleges. I'm glad to share that we can't do it for all of the Texas colleges, but I could share what that looks like with folks, and so you can see what a report on that line might look like. The second area of inquiry is, how well are we doing at the college, right? So one is, who's in need in our community? Where are the good jobs? The second is, how well are we doing? What are our graduation rates? How do they compare to others at the state level? How well are we providing for different populations in our community? Does our college reflect the diversity of the community? There's an access question there that's really important. Are we serving the adult learners that are really in need in our community? If we're seeing a lot of people in low-wage work, and we think the college is a conduit to their accessing good jobs, well, does our student population reflect that? If we think we are a key solution for recent high school graduates increasing their college going rate, from what high schools is that? Are we actually enrolling them? So there are access questions there too. But then it's student success outcomes. How well are we doing while students are in college? How does that compare to other colleges? And being really clear-eyed about that. I think boards should ask for that. Too often we try to explain that away. But who are our peers? How well are we doing in relation to them? What's the trajectory been over the last 5 years in the student success metrics that we're looking at? And then what goals should we set? I think from those two levels of inquiry, it's about setting some goals. And I don't think boards can do that independently. I think that really is a charge to the president, and to say, okay, let's decide on what metrics we want to look at. Let's set some goals and work together on those. Those would include leading and lagging indicators. Again, I mentioned math and English in the first year, credit accumulation, credit momentum. There are other things you can look at, and lagging indicators, graduation rates, transfer outcomes, workforce outcomes. But try to figure out what you want to look at together, and then work towards setting goals towards those. So I think conceptually, Carol, that's where I would go. And I actually think that framework works at the beginning and middle and the end, in a sense. I think that if you keep those things in mind, why are we here for the community? How well are we doing? And what are our goals? And what are we going to monitor along the way? I think that you can be a tremendous partner in advancing student success and equity at the college. That was a very long answer, but until more questions come up in the chat, we can. You're inviting me to speak for longer than I otherwise might.
Or if anyone would like to just ask a question verbally, please feel free to. We're a small group right now, so please feel free.
Hey, good afternoon, Josh and colleagues, and thank you, trustees, for hosting this. I was going to ask I know you went through the process of the successive iterations and explaining how it's almost a 2-year process. And what does it look like for the 23? When does that list come out?
Yeah. In the fall, we'll be announcing the 150. I think we're aiming for November, but forgive me, I should have known that coming into this conversation. But the way it works is that in the fall, mid to late fall, we will announce the 150. We'll invite applications. Folks typically have a couple of months. We then have a first round of reviews by our 20-person selection committee. We take a break to do leadership calls with about half of the applicants that rose highest in the rankings. And the design of those calls is to explore things in the application that the reviewers had questions about. We then bring the committee together in the spring to select the 10 finalists. We've announced the 10 finalists sometimes in May, but if we don't get to that, we sometimes wait until September. And really we're trying to maximize visibility. It's our communications experts who, some of it depends on the news cycle at the time. I will tell you that the 10 so every other year we're either announcing the 10 finalists or the Aspen Prize winners. It is both of those are the most viewed page on the Aspen Institute website every year.
Awesome.
We have 50 programs, Mike. I mean, we happen to be the biggest one with the College Excellence Program right now, but I have 35 staff out of 500 people at Aspen. Okay, and this is and by the way, the Aspen College Excellence Program has 10 or 11 big projects that we're working on at any given time. The prize is but one of those. This gets the most views of anything. So we really do, the announcement happens sometimes in September for that reason. And then around March or April, we announce the winner. So that's the typical cycle.
Thank you.
Sure.
Josh, can I ask a question? We've had some conversations about this, but that list that you showed us in the finalists, they're very different types of colleges. When we talk about replicating what good colleges do well, how do you gave us the overall list, but so many times we want to identify certain strategies. Can you talk about how the commonalities, the differences, and maybe how you see this work really helping colleges to get better?
Yeah, thank you, Martha. So it's been 11 years now, and we've done a lot of investigation. So there are things that emerge that we can't ask about during the prize process, and we go back and do deeper research. Sometimes we do it with partners. So on transfer, we worked with CCRC to develop the transfer playbook. Because we knew that the field was hungry for transfer knowledge, and there's only so much we can do. So some of the colleges we looked at for transfer practice were prize colleges, but others emerged from a separate analysis. And we go into a long form playbook with an assessment tool that's connected. So those of you who want to get better at workforce, dual enrollment, or transfer, we've got assessment tools and playbooks that do deep research on that. The prize helps us identify colleges that are excellence across the board that are included in that research, but they're not the exclusive colleges that we look at, sites that we go to. The second is there are capacities that we've discovered that really, really matter. And we go back to prize colleges and ask deeply just about those things and develop curricular material around that. So what do I mean by capacities? Well, some of it is, one of them is working with the board. And we now have a curriculum around how to work with a board. Secondly, working with your senior team. Martha, you worked with us on that. And we were looking at four-year colleges along the way, but the prize colleges were the community college examples that we used. How do you work to coalesce a senior team, your cabinet, around this goal of student success and equity? A third is strategic finance. Really matters. We don't ask a lot about finance in the prize process, but we went back and we now have a curriculum around what is strategic finance. We're developing a module on human capital reform. If you're like other colleges in the country, 85% of your money or more is spent on people. Well, what's your strategy for deploying those people aligned to your student success goals? So, Martha, we have been developing those strands of the work, both in student success strategies, right? The 5 categories I mentioned earlier, and in capacities. Within a year or so, we will have assessment tools that are aligned for all dozen capacities. That is what we're moving towards. JP Morgan Chase has given us some funds to work with our alumni and with colleges. And we're really thinking about how do we start to normalize that and not have it just be these separate tools in the field, but how do we align all of those things in ways that the field can pick and choose, but know that there's a standard way of doing this kind of assessment. Trust me, this is not going to be forced on anybody. There are others who have tried to do that. but we actually are getting a lot of demand for this and a lot of resonance with these tools that we've developed in the field with our fellows. And so the next stage of our evolution really is to try to take stock of what we've done, fill in whatever gaps we have on assessment tools, case studies. We have things called from-to analyses. In each case, we talk about what does traditional look like and what does transformational look like, and that's resonated with the field quite a bit as well. And then try to push that back out into the field. So it's constantly evolving. We recently did the dual enrollment playbook with CCRC because there was huge demand in the field, growth in dual enrollment, and that's had resonance as well. So that's the tool development. We have a lot of ways. What we're doing right now is part of how we replicate practice. As we talk to folks like you all who are doing great work, and we learn from you, and we share what we've learned with you.
Terrific. Thanks so much. That was really helpful. I think we have time for one more question, a brief question. We're getting close to the end, but if anyone has one. Great. Well, thank you, Josh, and thanks for allowing us to record this session today and for allowing us to have your slides as well, and to be able to share with other trustees and CEOs who could not join today due to the beginning of school. But thank you so much. I want to remind everyone once again of the Board of Trustees Institute and the CAT Annual Conference. We will see you soon. If you haven't registered, you can still register through September the 5th. We look forward to seeing you in Austin, and we look forward to hearing from our Aspen Prize finalists and winner during that Aspen Institute, where you can really ask very specific questions about the things that they have done in regard to achieving this excellence status. So thanks everyone for being here. Josh, thank you so much for your time today and sharing the knowledge with us that you have learned.
Thanks
Appreciate
for having me, Martha, and team. Great to see all of you.
Take care. Bye-bye, everybody. See you soon in Austin.